on a television screen and slap people around and knock them on the floor and act like I'm a healing them. Brother, I'll quit tomorrow. I ain't no good putting on no shows. I don't believe God likes putting on too many shows. I don't believe he puts up with too much foolishness, and I don't neither. I don't like it. In the 50th chapter of Isaiah, Isaiah is prophesied. I believe Isaiah prophesied this, and so did David in the 22nd Psalm, and made it more clear in the Old Testament days than any of the Gospels makes the crucifixion clear. I believe the old prophets made it more clear. They brought it back down to where I can understand it. And he says in verse 6 of chapter 50, this is Jesus talking, but if the prophet is prophesying what Jesus has said. He says, I gave my back to the smiters, and my cheeks to them that plucked off the hair. Now, Jesus had a beard until he went through Pilate's hall. And they took their wicked hands and jerked the beard off his face. Have you ever pulled just one, you men, have you ever pulled just one whisker? It'll bring tears to your eyes, just one. Can you imagine what he was going through? I can't imagine what he was going through. And brother, when I found out about 43 years ago that he went through this for me, I fell in love with the Savior.
Yeah.
When I found out how much he loved me, I couldn't help but to love him back.
Amen.
And he said, I hid not my face from shame and spitting. We're talking about God walking around in the flesh and how he was treated. The Creator, the one that created every one of them, he grew the tree they hung him on.
Yeah.
Now I want to go to chapter 53 or 52. And in verse 13 of chapter 52 of Isaiah, he said, Behold, my servant shall deal prudently. He shall be exalted and extolled and be very high. Now verse 14 says, As many were astonished at thee, that means astonished, of course, his visage, his looks, appearance, was so marred, more than any man. Scofield put in his footnote, sure, he said, the literal meaning is terrible. The literal meaning of what this scripture says right here, it says his appearance was more marred than any man. It meant he didn't look like a human when they nailed him up to the cross. His face was torn and ripped where they'd pulled the beard off of it. They had a crown of thorns stuck down on his head. They'd kneel in front of him and say, Hail, King of the Jews. They blindfolded him and they slapped him in the face with his face all injured and said, If you're the king, tell us who hit you. And he wouldn't open his mouth. His form was more than the sons of men. Now in 53, starting at verse 2. For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant and as a root out of dry ground. Talking about Jesus growing up before God. He hath no form nor comeliness. Now this is talking about after the torture. And when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. Verse 3 says, He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrow and acquainted with grief. You know, when our pathway gets pretty rough here, sometimes it does. Sometimes we have a hard time making it from one episode to another in our lifetimes as we journey through this old world here. The Bible says over in the book of Hebrews, says, Consider him who endured such a great fight of affliction, lest you be weary and faint in your mind. A lot of people's fainted in their minds in this day and time. What they've done is give up. That's what he's talking about. When you faint, you ain't dead. You're still there. You're still breathing. You're still alive. But you might as well be dead because you're fainted. You're out cold. You ever been out cold? Boy, I have. Yeah, you're useless. So that's what it's talking about. It said, lest you be weary and faint in your minds, consider him. Consider Jesus. Look, when I'm suffering, sometimes I feel sorry for myself. Sometimes I like people to pet me when I'm suffering
Well,
and feel sorry for me. And let me know they understand that I'm not at my bed. But if I could consider him, I'd think my suffering was a very light affliction.
Oh, yeah. Man.
All of my suffering. He's a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Now, right here, surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God. Now, the question I asked him at the funeral home, who do you believe killed Jesus? Some people say the Roman soldiers did. Some will say it was the Jews. It was against the law for the Jews to put any man to death, so they had the Romans do it. But I want you to know the one that put Jesus to death on the cross was God.
that's right.
God killed him for you and me so we could live.
You hear that?
Said he was smitten of God. They hung him on that cross, and after about 3 hours, God put his hand over the sun. He got tired of people looking at his darling boy there in shame, hanging there. What he was ashamed of was all the sins of this world piled on him, and he was the only innocent man that ever lived. The only innocent one that ever lived. I've heard people get out of prison. I had a couple of buddies in prison for a few months. Well, I was innocent of what they charged me by. I said, yeah, but you wasn't innocent.
No.
None of us ain't. I said, if they'd have caught me a time or two, I'd have done more time than you did.
Yeah.
I wasn't innocent, and neither was you. Might have been innocent of that one charge, but he still was not innocent. This is the only innocent man that ever lived.
Man.
And this old world couldn't stand him because he was so good. This rotten world can't stand people if they're too good.